What's up, guys? It's John, and let's talk about the Super Bowl for a minute. As you know, I already have a pretty long series on this Super Bowl, dating back to last year, but there's so much to go into. And I more want to go into what we've noticed this playoffs. As you know, there's always a lot to reassess, and there's some interesting commonalities. One was brought to my attention by somebody in the comments, and it was one that just kind of stuck with me when he said it. So I'm going to go into that, obviously, who we like. And again, we're not going to get every single one of them right, but I think we lined ourselves up pretty darn good. And based off all the angles we've covered this year, I think this is going to be a pretty easy Super Bowl pick. I could be wrong, but I was like, when I bring that up, there's a few schmucks who will be like, "You lost last week. You had this team winning," and it's like, yeah, I did. I always reassess, and I went with one team. They lost. We're never going to get them all right, but for the people that understand that having a 80 something% hit rate through the playoffs and still being able to really nail exactly what they're doing as far as the main story, which obviously Mahomes versus the world, for everyone that understands that we've been profiting doing well, I appreciate it. But yeah, I'll definitely take the L's when they come. When I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. So, for the people pointing that out, I do understand. I just try and take everything into account when I make my picks, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Yesterday, we had a really good day. Went 3 out of 4. Just the Lions Niners, a very weird game. Didn't know how obvious the NFL would be, so we're gonna go into that. And again, it's something I brought up before. Now, is Mahomes going to beat the Niners? Would that be too obvious? Would fans officially turn the game off, or will it not matter? There's a lot to go into there. One thing that I just did not want to forget, and I wanted to cover this because it's pretty darn. To me, it's too much of a coincidence to be just a coincidence. It's too much of. If it was just like two of these teams that I'm about to go into, I could chalk it up to a coincidence. But four, no way. So somebody pointed out that in order, the teams that never made a Super Bowl got bumped out. So by that I mean in Week 18, the Jaguars got bumped out with a 9-8 record, and they were like, well, they weren't seeded. Just with a 9-8 record, they didn't have a seed because they didn't make the playoffs. The following week in the wild card, the Browns got booted out, and as you can see, they're the 5 seed. The following week, the Texans got booted out, and they were a 4 seed. The following week, the Lions got booted out, and they are a 3 seed. I find that pretty darn impressive. The person that found that connection, amazing job. Again, this is a think tank, so we're not going to just take credit. And if you please I responded to him, but if you please want to take credit and just post, that was me or whatever, I'll remember. I think it was Luigi. I'm almost positive it was Luigi. It's hard to remember all the different names, but I think it was Luigi. And I saw that, and I'm like, you know what? That's a really good point. So he noticed that pretty quickly, and that's just one of the many different angles that they run. They run all sorts of these weird symbolism type deals. Now, the weirdest thing about this Super Bowl, and again, we went into it, gosh, back when it was like, I'd say right around something like Chiefs Cowboys ish. It was around this week, maybe even before. It depends on when. So it was Lions, Chiefs. Yeah, actually closer to Chiefs Giants, Chiefs Cardinals. Between September October is when we went into the Chiefs Niners. And the reason it wasn't for no reason. It was because I really noticed at the time, and I'm now, of course, what they say is always stick with your first instinct. But not only the Brock versus Mahomes story, but there's a wrestling tie-in here, and I know people think I'm nuts, but I genuinely believe there's a wrestling tie-in. Just looking at some basic things, the last times these two teams played was in the Superdome in Louisiana, the Blackout Bowl. Apparently, this year was supposed to be in the Blackout Bowl. Louisiana is also where, and it was also 10 years ago, I believe it was 10 years ago, was also where it wasn't exact. I'm trying to think exactly what year it was. It was very close to 10 years ago when Undertaker's streak was ended by Brock. So you got Brock. Now, last year, and the reason I did a bunch of videos last year on the Niners, again, we had a Super Bowl 57. We thought they were doing it last year, and I think I was just a year off, was because of Paul Heyman. He was coming out talking about Brock Purdy and all these different things. And Paul Heyman's a rat. He's always, he always gives away quote spoilers. He does it all the time. So it's very interesting. And deeper than that, I noticed connections with wrestlers and NFL players. Like if you watch the NBA, the way LeBron James walks around, the way he carries himself, the fact that King James, it's almost like Roman Reigns and LeBron have the same gimmick. And what makes it crazier is the tribal chief Roman Reigns gimmick is fairly new. LeBron always acted a certain way, and they always called him King James, not always, but they called him King James for a while. But just little nuances about how he carries himself have changed since Roman Reigns has basically just turned into Thanos. The way they have treated LeBron as far as the pictures they show of him, very similar. So I notice it across the sports. Now, in football, it's weird because we're looking at a situation where, and it's weird to explain, but it's in a way, I feel like Mahomes is kind of Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. And I'll go into it deeper, but it's which story are they going to tell? He's the tribal chief, obviously reigning defending champion. He 2 WrestleManias in a row. This will be the third. So very interesting. With Mahomes obviously reigning defending champion. This is going to be his second Super Bowl in a row, going for his third. So it's all very interesting there. And more so on the other end, you have the what I believe to be at least the story. Can Mahomes complete the story, which is Cody Rhodes' deal. So like I said, it's kind of weird. And the story obviously being going on the road and beating nothing but favorites after having a rough year by yourself, right? Mahomes versus the world. And the payoff would be the Niners, this stacked team where it's like 11 All-Stars versus 1 All-Star. So, again, that's why this made a lot of sense to me a while back. Now, again, of course, I'm not going to have a pick and be perfect on it through the whole year with zero, absolutely zero reflection and zero assessments. There's going to be stuff. We had the Ravens beginning of the year. Some things started didn't making sense, so we went with the Chiefs. So I mean, there's nothing, in my opinion, too crazy that I could see now because these are all possibilities we looked at. Now here is something that just the most damning to me, just one of the most damning things, because like I said, there are so many wrestling connections, but then you also have to just look at the logic. And let's look at this spread. How convenient. 1 point. Just so they can officially say the Chiefs are underdogs, right? Now, I looked at this and I was very curious because I was wondering, are they doing this 1 point so people don't get paid out on the Chiefs like last week with the Ravens? Because they want the Chiefs to be underdogs, in my opinion. They need them to be. And that's why I said these Vegas numbers are psychological. When people were saying to me the Chiefs are going to be favorites next week, I said not a chance. They would not make the Chiefs favorites after losing, or after playing 3-4 weeks in a row on the road and you're underdogs in all those games against teams that are nowhere near as good as the Niners. So this 1 point spread's weird. I guess we could expect nothing less. They love their 2-1s, all that stuff. But the question comes down to: is it set here so they, people get baited into betting the Niners and lose all their money, or is it set here because, like I said, they simply want the Chiefs to look like they are underdogs, and they want it to look like a very, very close game? It could be either. As you can see, the ESPN simulator, which I'm sure we can take very seriously, is 60%. But we have a lot of stories here, obviously, and the biggest one is, again, Brock Purdy And I know I just said it about Roman Reigns, but Reigns is the tribal chief at the end of the day. Roman Reigns is the tribal chief. You know, it's literally his moniker. He wears the same colors. I don't know how many other times. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. He reps San Francisco, so that's what I meant about how it's like he's both teams. It's really hard to explain. I can't show the top part, or they freaking take the video. It's so stupid. Get copyrighted and such if the videos start rolling. But anyway, the tribal chief obviously goes to Roman Reigns, despite him having San Francisco connections, which is interesting. On the San Francisco end, we got Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy is such an interesting one because, to me, Brock Purdy is Cody Rhodes. Let's look at what happened with both of these guys. So Cody Rhodes fought Roman Reigns. Everybody thought it was his time, and everyone thought that with a lot of people thought that with Brock Purdy last year going into the Super Bowl NFC Championship. It's his time, and in Cody's case, couldn't get it done. Winds up getting injured. Now he again the whole pec injury that happened at the I forget when it happened, but it happened before their match. But he winds up tearing his pec, obviously. Kind of new to the scene. When he had first came on, he tears his pec, he's out for like a year. Brock Purdy, kind of new to the scene, getting hot. Bam. Messes his elbow up, misses the playoffs. So then Cody Rhodes gets crack number two. He does win the Rumble. So that's the equivalent of the NFC Championship. And gets to WrestleMania now. And it's going to be Cody versus Roman round two. And here we have the same deal. Now, Purdy didn't go against Roman Reigns besides WrestleMania. It's not like they had a bunch of matches. They had two matches at the Super Bowl. And Purdy didn't go against, of course, Mahomes yet in the Super Bowl. They had their one regular season matchup, which Mahomes won. So this will be match number two. So Roman went up 1-0. I think Cody's going to win the second one. I think everyone thinks that, but anything could happen. And in the NFL, we had Mahomes go up 1-0, and now Purdy's looking for the revenge. Now, what makes it more interesting is there is a connection here because when the Niners got Christian McCaffrey, I believe that was the week that the Chiefs beat them. I think they beat them. I don't know if McCaffrey started that game, but they won the game, and that's when Brock Purdy went on his crazy winning streak. I think it was like I don't know, like 7, 8 games, and then they didn't count the Eagles game because they said he didn't really have a chance. And then they came out this year and won like 5, 6 games, whatever it was. The total winning streak was like I think 12, 13 games, something like that. 12-1 is what I believe it was, which would be insane. Again, if it was 12-1, again 2-11's the Super Bowl. Brock's Lesnar ended Taker's streak at 21-1. There are so many numbers that go into this, which is why we're not going to go crazy with the gematria. But as far as the game itself, and I like to just do my best to simplify things, reassess when things are looking one way, and then we kind of get hit with a swerve, or looking at basically what we've liked all year, what's changed, all these different things. And for me, the biggest deal on the AFC side is again going to be pushing how it's Mahomes versus everybody. Somehow these guys are underdogs, despite the fact that they keep winning, despite the fact that they have a top defense. It's funny how they have so many people convinced that they are actually underdogs, and they're doing a good job of it in my opinion. But it's just ridiculous. So it comes down to also I just noticed this the Niners' last game of the year was the same score as the Chiefs' first game of the year. So they talk about full circle, and you can see how it's everywhere. So that's why I'm always looking and checking out new stuff because it's pretty interesting when you start seeing all these commonalities. Of course, I'm not saying it's completely related, but 21-20 is not a score you see often. So pretty weird to have again Chiefs open with 21-20 in a losing effort, and Niners close the season 21-20 in a losing effort. So, which story is the bigger draw? Because at this point, we know now. Well, we already kind of knew it, but I was starting to have some doubts. Is the NFL going to give us an obvious storybook top draw Super Bowl that looks like McMahon himself booked it? And obviously, the answer is yes. So now it comes down to which story do they tell? Are they going to continue the Golden Boy? Give him two in a row. You got him there a second time. You might as well give him the win, right? Because It's been a while since a team's gone back to back. The last one to do it was Brady, I believe, and you're trying to push this guy as the new Brady. So to get them there and then have him lose would really be a slap in his face, in my opinion. Now, on the other end, we have a lot of players who really want redemption. Debo Samuel, who I don't think people say all the time, oh, everybody would have to know it's rigged, all these things. I genuinely don't think Debo Samuel was expecting to lose in 2019, 2020. I think it was 2019, right? I don't. It was 4 years ago, which is again interesting. It seems to be like these 4 year type deals. It was like right before an election year, and this one's going to be the same deal. But to me, again, it's just an interesting dynamic when you have the team that I feel like has paid the dues. They have a bunch of players, like I brought up before, Fred Warner. You obviously got Debo Kittle being a big one. A lot of people, and I think on the coaching staff were there last time around, that you would really think that they're going to give it to. But then you look at the Heat, you look at Miami Butler or Jimmy Butler, and it's like, well, they didn't give it to him. They had a bunch of guys too. They had, what's his name? Kyle Lowry. They had, Bam hadn't really paid a bunch of dues, but they had Love. Love already got one, but they had players that had paid dues. Some of them already got their championships, but for the most part, a few of them didn't. I do think this is a different story. Let's see what Reed says here. Okay, he's just talking about the game. Anyway, so yeah, it really comes down to the story of Mahomes versus the world, which is a huge story. And if they're going to get the fans finally on Mahomes, or if it's going to be it just wasn't enough to beat this team. You need a team effort. You can't do it alone. And they're both great stories. In the NBA, they're pushing the ladder, 100%. So in the NBA, I would definitely go with the team that's just stacked because, or not even stacked, but just playing more cohesively. Again, a perfect comparison is the Heat and the Nuggets. The Nuggets were just the better team. They were, whatever Jimmy could do was not enough, right? And it's funny, you got Jimmy G buckets, and you got Jimmy G who was on the last Super Bowl. It's almost like a Project Looking Glass type deal. But in the NFL, it's a lot different. They will have one guy take over a game. They will have one guy look better than an entire team. So we can't really use the NBA logic. If you look at this, it's another interesting thing. They have a Rice on Kansas City, Rashay Rice, and furthermore, I believe they're saying how he broke Rice's record, but they're leaving out how I believe, and I could be wrong, but I think it's tied. He's either tied or one behind the record for Jerry Rice. So Kelsey can now break the Jerry Rice record against San Francisco, which is another very interesting story. It's a playoff record too, so it just happens to fit perfectly. And then you throw in the fact that, and I find this one interesting as well, like I said, a lot of it's interesting. And a lot of people didn't notice this one, and I didn't really think about it until late. Joe Montana played on both teams, and who is Purdy getting compared to? Who is the one guy Brady is the one guy better than Joe Montana by most people's opinion. It's Brady, right? So you got this Brady connection with Purdy and Mahomes, and you got this Montana connection with Mahomes and Purdy because they play for those respective teams. So I could look back and see what happened when Joe Montana went to the Chiefs and, go back 20 years and try and do it that way. But using symbolism never seems to work. When I use all those different types of deals, it never seems to work. Just kind of looking at good old fashioned wrestling logic is it's usually what gives us the best results. Again, that's what gave us this matchup such a long time ago. The symbolism is typically where I'll wind up screwing up. If you watch the World Series videos, if you watch any of my old football videos, all these different things, it's typically the symbolism, gematria, that kind of stuff that will wind up not really helping. So I'm going to stick to the straight up storylines, and I like to see what some of these talking heads are saying because they can give away a lot. Sometimes they don't. It's in Vegas, we know that. Nothing crazy there. Looks like they're the X Factor, so it looks like they're just going to go into analytics. I'm curious what they say about the, like I said, the different stories, and they're not going to talk about the narratives too much, But they did do it in the championship game. They were talking about how each, oh, this is a draw for this team. This is a draw for another team. So it makes sense in my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people are bringing up the number 6 and how the Niners would be going for the 6th. And that would give 3 teams with 6, so 666. Again, that's more symbolism, so I'm not going to really focus on that. This is what I'm focused on. So this matchup, again, in my opinion, going into the last time they played in 2019, won by the Chiefs, provides a chance of immortality for all involved, but more specifically, it gives the Chiefs the opportunity to continue a run that's been rarely seen, winning back to back. And then, of course, they go back to the Patriots, which was exactly 20 years prior. And again, it just seems too perfect, right? You're running it back with Mahomes 20 years later, new generation. This generation's Tom Brady. Andy Reid is this generation's Bill Belichick. Just so simple. It's got to be the Chiefs, right? And who knows? That could be the case. They are pretty obvious. But for me, I'm looking at the second part. For the Niners, a chance to finally break through advancing to the NFL Championship game since 2011 without a single bowl. They lost to the Ravens and the Chiefs, which is interesting because the Ravens and Chiefs played each other. Again, like the circle, the 5 degrees of I call it the 5 degrees of John Harbaugh, but whoever you want to call it, in my opinion, it's just there's no way that these things are all coincidences. So you go down and you can see there's Purdy's no Steve Young, but winning his first Super Bowl is a great step, and they're going into all that. And it's really you can see the story of Mahomes and Reed versus 12, which is just insane Pro Bowlers. So half the freaking more than half the guys out there. You know, they got 22 guys out there. Not including the special teams unit. 12 of them are Pro Bowlers, and then you go into the players, the coaches. So it makes the Niners look just completely undefeatable. And again, you could run it both ways. You can say only Mahomes can beat the Niners. No other quarterback would be able to do this incredible run. But then again, Kansas City, just like I was getting, like I brought up the vibes where Miami Heat, they were given the vibes where it's like, okay, they're finally going to get one. Kansas City kind of gives me Miami vibes. Again, they kind of run it both ways. Where as far as, at least in my opinion, they're the team who got in there, beat teams that they shouldn't have on the road, and beat tough teams. So the Heat had to go through the Celtics. They had to go through. I think the Celtics beat the Sixers. I forget. I think the Heat went through the Bucks. Just tough teams, beat them and got there. But again, it wasn't quite enough. So it's going to come down to what angle we get. Is the Chiefs going to be enough? Is Patrick Mahomes going to be enough? Is going to be the question. After last week, again, if you look at how these teams both looked, if you looked at, and this is a very early, I'll have more, updates out as far as what I think, but this is just my initial gut, which has been my initial gut for a while now. So I just really have a hard time, not going with it. But like I said, it could go both ways. They're already showing us the matchups. I do not think they're going to have Mahomes beat the Niners. I don't. And the reason being is, it almost seems like they already got them to the Super Bowl, and I feel like now for most people, it's going to be a foregone conclusion. Like anybody at this point who fades Mahomes, in my opinion, is going to have a hard time doing it. Like there are so many people saying you just can't fade Mahomes. Like at this point, and I was saying that before the Ravens game. I was shocked they were getting plus 180 because I'm like nobody fades Mahomes. Now all of a sudden people are fading him. Doesn't make sense to me. But he rolls the Ravens, who most people had as the best team. I gone into a million times how real or fake the Niners are clearly the best team. They just have way more ways they can beat you. As far as the Ravens only have it's kind of like the Chiefs. They got Lamar with better receiving and such, but the Niners are just completely stacked from top to bottom. So it's going to come down to Mahomes again versus the world. I just can't imagine. This wasn't like it's not like the Ravens Niners where it was 10, 15 years ago. This was just a few years ago. Just a few years ago. And again, we had the third stepson of Tom Brady involved with Jimmy G, right? So he beat the one Tom Brady guy, Jimmy G, and now we have the two true Tom Brady guys going at it. Now obviously Mahomes is the real Tom Brady guy. It's almost like an Eminem thing where the real Tom Brady guys stand up, but we have Purdy, who's being pushed so hard as a Tom Brady guy. And this is what I went into. It's not like he was a late sixth round pick. It's not like he was drafted in the seventh round. This man was Mr. Irrelevant. You can't make that up. You just can't make up Mr. Irrelevant, in my opinion. So we look at the matchup here, and I'm sure they're going to talk right about it. There we go. Mr. Irrelevant, but he's been anything but irrelevant. He's been highly efficient and at times spectacular. He's 26 starts. So we see his record. Now, if he loses, he does go to the Kobe record, which big number. So we have to think about that. It's Kobe's year, so there's nothing that I just completely ignore. And I know a lot of people might be on that. Oh, we can go to 21-6. Again, I don't pay too much attention to that. What is pretty interesting is BP for Brock Purdy is 216. So for you Gematria guys, you might like that. Again, I don't go too much into those things, but it is pretty interesting. And yeah, I just don't think they're going to do this with Mahomes yet. They certainly could. Like I said, they could just give him the win, give him 3 Super Bowls, and then he has a couple down years. They kind of did that with Brady. He had another run. And I get with people saying that Reed's retiring, all these different things. It's going to be Mahomes. To me, it just kind of, and I know the NFL doesn't care about subtlety, but it's just kind of obvious in my opinion, as far as the Chiefs winning this game, especially with what they just did against the Ravens. I just feel like people are going to look at the fact the Niners barely came back and beat the Packers. Same deal with the Lions. Meanwhile, the Chiefs rolled the Dolphins, beat the Bills in a closer game, and then rolled the Ravens. There's no way people are going to look at that, and again, in a neutral spot now, and be on all over the Niners. It just wouldn't make sense to me here. So you can see these predictions, Chiefs. So the analysts are saying Chiefs, which is funny, very very funny. You know, this right here is all you need to know. These same analysts were saying the Chiefs had no chance against Baltimore. There's no way they could win that game. You know, it's not enough. And now these same people, I don't know if it's these same, I know Dan Orlovsky was one of them. These same people are now pushing up. It's Mahomes versus the world. That's what I mean about these people have to know what's going on, all of them, to some extent. There's no way they all went from they don't have a chance to suddenly remembering the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes. So there's our story. It's Mahomes versus the world. It's also Mr. Irrelevant versus the greatest quarterback playing. So we have two amazing stories. Something's got to give story. I've went into this before, and I'll go into it again. Uh, what I wonder what the over under is going to be on how many times they say the word Mr. Irrelevant. It's probably going to be somewhere between like 8 and 10. This game, it's going to be absolutely bonkers just because they want to remind us that it's Mr. Irrelevant, in case we forgot, and they want to remind us it's Patrick Mahomes in case we forgot. So yeah, looking at this game again, they say never go against your intuition, which is something I unfortunately did. Looking at the playoffs, I was looking at the games, and something about Detroit just really stuck to my gut, and I don't know why. But looking at this specific game, I cannot go against, like I said, a year of conviction. I can't, especially they say fool me once, shame on me, you fool me twice, shame on me. That would definitely be shame on me. And I just can't go against it. The gold standard. I feel like that's a big deal. Another thing people haven't mentioned, and I think it's an interesting one, is Swift currency. They're talking about the Swift currency, and then obviously the gold standard. So you have battle of the currencies. There are so many different stories entangled here that there's so much that could happen. But for me, it's just keeping it simple. You have a redemption story. Brock Purdy is the American, the American dream, if you will. Oh, last pick in the draft. I think it was all set up and everything, but last pick in the draft, he overcame all these obstacles. What a great, upstanding man. He still rides the subway. All the crap that they're trying to push with this guy, and that's why I think it makes perfect sense. You get Mahomes versus the world. There will be no shame for Mahomes in losing this Super Bowl. He's had the the best run you could have if you think about it, as far as how Vegas has had him. And I know a lot of people are like, no, that he's going to complete the story. He's just winning. There's no way with Swift, all these different things. But I genuinely think it's going to be the 49ers. I think and it's funny because something has to give here. Because again, there's been things we were wrong about. We didn't think the Chiefs were going to make a playoffs. I went into that beginning of the year. I really thought they were going to have a down year, and obviously they didn't. Now, to be fair, they did have a down year, but obviously, if you look at the playoffs and all, they didn't. But from the media's perspective, it was their worst year in a long time. But for me, what I'm paying attention to is not only, like I said a million times, the Mahomes versus the world narrative, but just the fact that there will Mahomes losing this won't do anything. Like, I think at the worst they lose. Right, he goes to 2-4 in the Super Bowl, which isn't anything crazy. It's not like he's 0 for 4 or something. He's still got two bowls. Doesn't quite get the back to back yet. I think he'll get it at some point in his career, just not now. But you finally you push that the team that has just the leg up on in every regard is going to win. No matter how good you are, even if you are the great Patrick Mahomes, it's not going to be good enough to win on your own. We used to see it all the time with Peyton Manning. Like, even when he wasn't going against Brady, if he wasn't, like, the Colts never had a great team. It was just Peyton Manning. So they'd play the Ravens, and the Ravens would beat them. They'd play whoever, Pittsburgh, and it's because they do like to push the whole team, the coaching, all these different aspects. So for me, as you can see, what's very interesting for me is the fact that all of these analysts are now saying Chiefs. And now you're going to see people, I guarantee you, that people that think it's real, just following exactly what the analysts are saying. The analysts said the Ravens were going to blow out the Chiefs. That's what the people were saying. The analysts said the Bills, all these different teams. Whenever they faded the Chiefs, they got the people to come along with them. So in this case, I just genuinely believe they've set this whole thing up to make Patrick Mahomes look completely undefeatable on the road. And finally, Mr. Irrelevant's going to come through and complete his story, like we had him doing last year. And of course, they had the fake injury last year, so you never know. But I think it was a fake injury. I think if that was a real injury, they would have just put Christian McCaffrey in at quarterback, like, instead of doing what they did. So that just doesn't make any sense for me. Now, what's also interesting is I do have the Celtics. I like the Celtics a lot this year, and obviously that would give them the record for pennants in the NBA. Niners, I don't think they're going for a record, but they're going for number 6, which is up there. I think the record's the Patriots. I genuinely don't look at the history that deeply, but I know, or they might be tied with 6 all. I think that's what it is. I think I brought it up earlier. There'd be 3 with 6, something like them, the Steelers and the Patriots, or something like that. There's 3 teams that will have 6 pennants, but to me, again, I get the Chiefs. I get that you're looking at Taylor Swift, Kelsey retiring. Well, not retiring, but it's going to be his last big year, and he might retire. You never know. He might just retire into paradise with Taylor Swift. You have Andy Reid leaving, so I understand why it makes perfect sense for the Chiefs. Again, I have to stick with the Niners. I made the mistake already of thinking, okay, maybe they're going to save the Niners for next year, and got kicked in the gonads as a result. So certainly something I can't do again. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we've had this read on the Niners for such a long time, and they're just gonna lose. Like, if that happens, then that happens. Fine, my read was way off, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be a deal of it was just too much. If you notice, the Niners, they had guys playing well, but they didn't, like, again, Kittle was a guy who was quiet. We're gonna have Kittle versus Kelsey, so I'm wondering if we're gonna get that both of them just going absolutely nuts. That would make sense. And that you can see the matchups. They're trying to build it just like rivalries in WWE. And McCaffrey versus the linebacking core. Pacheco had a great game last game. But again, that's more the assuming it's real aspect, which is obviously not. To me, it's going to be what happens when you get into the Taylor Swift story. You got the halftime show is going to be interesting. And then there is the aspect that I've been thinking about. You kind of have Satan versus God, if you think about it. because the 49ers have Brock Purdy, who believes in Jesus and always gives. They were apparently there was a bunch of Niners giving Jesus the credit when they won, and you had obviously Taylor Swift, who's basically an open Satanist at this point. So both of those teams are going to be very interesting as far as that. Typically, they punish people who believe in God, but I honestly think the reason the three different guys from the Niners came out and talked about faith was because they got a lot of flack back for what they did to CJ as far as editing his comments, things like that. So I think the NFL is realizing, okay, yeah, we don't want to turn our fans on, turn on our fans too much. Now here's the odds, of course, and I went into them already. So opened at 2.5, down to 1.5. And again, I think this is nothing more than a psychological number. I could be wrong, because a lot of people would say this, and it's like, oh, they want you to bet the Niners. I think they do these things on purpose. They do them every single game. They'll have a team move for no reason. But you can see they just went out of their way just to make the Chiefs slight enough favorites. Interesting, the MVP is, uh, and now I get it's because probably Purdy and McCaffrey are both like split to win it, whereas Mahomes is definitely a favorite. But yeah, they got the MVP of the team that they have losing, or at least from a Vegas aspect. The underdog is all the favorite to win MVP. So that's very interesting. And I think that makes sense because, again, if you're looking at it from a real perspective, which is how they try and book it, you really wouldn't know who would win MVP if it would be Purdy or McCaffrey. So with Mahomes, you kind of know it would be him. So I do get that one. But yeah, it's just interesting how they say 1.5 now. It's literally at 1 point. It's like 1 point. It might even be a pick 'em. I don't think they'll move it to a pick 'em because then they can't call the Chiefs underdogs. So in my opinion, you have, again, which is funny, but you got the underdog Patrick Mahomes going up against the stacked Niners, who have arguably the one of the worst starting quarterbacks intangibly in the league. And I know that's like a hot take, but it's the truth. As far as if they stuck Herbert or like so many other guys on this team with this squad, it's known that the Niners are ever since they had Alex Smith, they've been a system type of quarterback deal where it's not about the quarterback being great, it's just being the beneficiary of a system. So yeah, my early, and again, we had this a while ago, and of course, again, we're not going to get every single one right. We had the Ravens in the preseason, we had to reassess that, so that one went our way. They don't always go our way though, but since we've still been on the target, in my opinion, for such a long time here, I have to say that it's going to be the Niners. I think they've paid enough dues, and I know they love ripping fans' hearts out. See, it's down to 1 point now. I know they love ripping fans' hearts out. I know they love to do that. They just did it with Detroit. They did it with Cleveland. They've done it with the Jets at the beginning of the year. Another interesting thing, both ARs went down with a pretty similar injury. I thought about that when someone was bringing up Richardson. I was like, oh yeah, we had two ARs go down. Same injury, kind of weird. Wonder if Austin Reeves is going to have the same deal happen to him. But yeah, it's going to be the Niners. I really believe it. Again, the gold currency is another reason. That was one of the reasons we liked them for a while too. I brought up the gold currency. It wasn't just Brock Purdy. Mr. Irrelevant is a big story, but the gold is big to me as well, especially when you throw in Swift currency, gold currency. They love these double meanings, so in my opinion, it just makes perfect sense that you roll with the Niners. Now, of course, anything can happen. This time, I seriously doubt it because, as you guys can see, when I start overthinking things, overanalyzing things, that's when they can head south. When I just kind of go with my gut and go with what I've been seeing for the last 2 years, that's when we usually wind up nailing it. So, won't be looking too much into the symbolism. Like I said, you can find symbolism everywhere. You look into Joe Montana and you look into all these connections. It could be very interesting, but it's going to be crazy. We're going to have Kelsey most likely. I think he tied the touchdown record, but he might be one short of it. If he's one short of it, I think he's definitely tying it. I don't know if they'll have him break it, but we'll go into props another time. But yeah, just an initial instinct. Again, it's 2 weeks away, but again, we've been putting them out for a long, long time, so it's not like it's too early. I got Niners beating the Chiefs. Simple as that, and You can let me know what you think. You can let me know which story you think is better. Patrick going back to back against all odds. Here's my problem with him going back to back. Then I don't know. I feel like long term it kills his legacy. And the reason I say that is unless they're just gonna have this guy keep winning, which I seriously doubt, it's the same deal with Joker in the NBA. When you look that good and you run through people in the playoffs and you do things you shouldn't do and you're not even firing on full all cylinders and you have injuries and you don't have a great squad. There's all these problems with the Chiefs, and if they're to win anyway, then I feel like they'd have to win like every year going forward. And then if they don't, it wouldn't be believable. How are they able to win? Now you add some critical playmakers, and then you can't get it done. It just doesn't make sense in my opinion. Unless they pull a stunt where they have him win, and then like Chris Jones leaves, Kelsey leaves, and they become just a horrible team where it literally is just Mahomes. But I don't think that's the goal. I think the goal is to again make it where you have a David versus Goliath story, which is funny because with the Chiefs it's usually always reversed. But they've done a great job of convincing people that Patrick Mahomes should be viewed as an underdog. But now, as you can see, it's not here, wherever it was. All the announcers and analysts are suddenly saying, "Oh yeah, you can't bet against Patrick Mahomes." They weren't saying that last week. They were all taking the opposite team. So the analysts kind of made me, when I read this first thing in the morning, really think about it more. And I'm like, yeah, to me, I think we got it. I think we nailed it back in week 5. I don't think it makes sense that Patrick Mahomes just beats this Niners team. Again, it's a team versus a player at the end of the day, and they love pushing the whole team camaraderie aspect, as you can see. I mean, they, especially in a league where people, and there's one thing that I haven't mentioned yet. I mentioned it before, but not in this video. Pat McAfee literally said last year, it's becoming a problem, with this Bengals game when the Chiefs beat the Bengals. Now everybody thinks that it's rigged for the new Golden Boy, and they're going to start a new dynasty with Patrick Mahomes, and the NFL has to do something about this. Again, to put him in the Super Bowl and have him beat, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL, who's been the best team for the last probably 2 years, as far as just being unstoppable, a year and a half at least. Most All Stars, all these different aspects. I just don't think. I think that would, again, it would have so many people screaming, especially because it's the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl people pay more attention to than other games. I don't know why. I get it's the Super Bowl, but even people that know it's scripted will pay more attention to the Super Bowl, care more about the Super Bowl than these other games. And for me, this would just completely open the floodgates where you have Taylor Swift there. This ridiculous, she's gonna be flying there from. It's gonna be like Friends style where Ross is going trying to get to the airport to see Rachel. We're gonna have her flying from Tokyo to try and get to the fight in time or to get to the game in time. The whole thing is lunacy, and for them to finish it off with a Chiefs win, in my opinion, would convince so many fans all that already believe it's scripted. Yeah, this is scripted for Mahomes. There's no other answer. There's no other way. A great way to quash that, and you're still making Mahomes look amazing. You get him to the Super Bowl, and then once he gets there, of course, you have the better team that's just too much. Just like the Nuggets were too much for Jimmy Butler. It's a very similar story, in my opinion. Of course, Mahomes has been there before, so it's a little different. But as far as just being outmatched, they used the term outclassed and outmatched a lot when it came to the Heat Nuggets. We kind of have the same deal here, in my opinion, and that's what we're gonna get. So yeah, I like the Niners here, and the reason I'm bringing it up now is because they love pushing this Chiefs underdog angle. I could see this +1 moving to like +3. I mean, we saw the Ravens move from 2.5 to 4.5. So if this moves to something like 3, 3.5, all of a sudden, you're not getting a pick 'em anymore. So you can see it opened at 2.5 and moved the one way. I think it's going to start moving the other way. I just have a feeling. I feel like they want to make the Chiefs make look like as big underdogs as possible, and I think they want to get people on the Chiefs. So you get them at +3, +4, and people are going to just be again so excited to take that, thinking, "Oh, here's another easy money pick." So I think this was like a long trap where it's like again, They set it up to seem like the Chiefs were going to lose to the Dolphins, even though we knew that wasn't going to happen. Lose to the Bills, which again definitely looked like a possibility as far as the way they booked the teams. They did a good job of convincing on that one. And then lose to the Ravens. Again, they made that one look like a complete possibility, and a lot of people bought it. I was surprised how many people were like, yeah, the Ravens are going to body the Chiefs. I really was. Like, when I was looking at that game, I'm like, okay, now I know the Chiefs are going to win because everybody's picking the Ravens. Now, I don't know what's going to be the case here, but based off the analysts, they're definitely going with, oh, they got Mahomes. You can't, when you got Mahomes, you can't count them out. So you see how quickly they change their assessments, and again, they're told what to say. So they're going to 1 week say Mahomes or no Mahomes, they can't get it done. The next week it's up, it's Mahomes, they're immediately a favorite. So I found the spread a little weird. I thought the Niners would have been like 3 point favorites. As you can see, it opened that way and they moved it. Again, I genuinely think this is just so they can make the Chiefs underdogs. It's just how convenient it's a 1 point game that happens to go the Chiefs' way as far as them being an underdog. And now they can continue the story. And again, it's the battle of the stories. And I think Brock Purdy just has a better story. I think his story makes more sense. I think his story. Another thing that's weird is, yeah, the 1-2-6, but the records don't count. So that could have happened weeks and weeks ago. So you look at the records and it's like, oh, 12-6, 12-6. But again, that could have been the case the last several weeks. And obviously, this is just the regular season. So again, the reason I stay away from numbers. So yeah, I just don't see the Chiefs winning this game. I think A would be way too obvious. I know the NFL doesn't care too much about subtlety, but you have to understand they have so many people saying that it's. I can't show the ads. They'll CR me. They have so many people saying that this is ridiculous. It's scripted for Mahomes. Again, why would you just give him the win? It makes no sense in my opinion. And Taylor Swift, now she's already going to be there. I think she's going to be there. People were like, oh, she's coming from Japan. Do you guys realize, the access to private jets that she has, all these different things? It's not like it's an hour apart. Logan Paul had a wrestling match and then got to Jake Paul's fight, which was like it was like from, I don't know where Logan Paul wrestled, but it certainly wasn't in I think Vegas or wherever the heck Jake was wrestling. It was several states apart. And he got there like well before the fight started. It seemed like he got there like 30 minutes after his match. So like these people have private jets, and if again Taylor Swift has way more luxuries than Logan Paul. So for people saying, oh, she wouldn't be able to make the Super Bowl anyway, that's just malarkey. She's making the Super Bowl. So it's going to come down to, again, between the two teams, which one is the bigger story. And I genuinely think, and this is another thing people have been overlooking, and I think it makes a lot of sense, that they're going to say that Taylor Swift has been a distraction. They haven't mentioned it. They kind of teased it a couple times. But I genuinely think Kelsey might come out, lay a complete dud, and then they'll say, oh, Swift was a distraction. They were so focused on that, they didn't focus on this hungry Niners team. This Niners team came out for blood. The Chiefs were here to have some fun. Like, those are the narratives that I see happening. And it's just what makes sense to me. There's the obvious ones, like I had brought up a million times, Mr. Irrelevant for Mahomes and the first versus last type deal. Even though Mahomes wasn't the first pick, he's the first quarterback in the league. He's the greatest quarterback in the league. Soon they're going to be saying ever. They're going to be just basically the LeBron Michael type deal we'll get with Mahomes Brady, and Brady will be compared to MJ for a while, but I think pretty soon they might try and flip it. They love Patrick Mahomes, and they want people to forget legends so they can get behind the new legends. So, to me, you got to give this to Debo, Fred Warner, all these guys that have been there, and again, George Kittle. And George Kittle was a little bit of foreshadowing. He was at WrestleMania with his WWE Championship. As you know, this was last year. As you know, they love giving the winners WWE Championships. So there's just so many reasons that I believe, and a lot of them are wrestling related. If I showed you guys some of the wrestling commonalities, it'd probably blow your mind. As far as Brock, Brock Lesnar, and Roman, there's a lot of weird combinations with all these guys. So, in my opinion, it's all been set. I think it's like, again, the best way I can describe it's like Project Looking Glass, where WWE will somehow predict something that happens like 10 years later in the NFL, or in this case, we're getting a rematch from like 10 years ago, and all these, or 4 years ago, I'm sorry, the Ravens would have been like 10 years ago, from 4 years ago, and it's just so perfect. Again, it's in a political year, which is always very interesting. So there's so many things you can tie in. I look at the gold. To me, the gold's a big deal. They keep talking about the fall of the dollar. That's why like, the Nuggets won, the Knights won, and we liked the Niners before the Nuggets and Knights won. That's how long I've been on this Niners band, train as far as you gotta give Mr. Irrelevant the Super Bowl. But the gold theme is another one that I noticed when the Nuggets and the Knights won. Oh, they're really seeming to push the gold aspect this year. So to me, yeah, we have what I believe to be finally a pretty well, not only obvious story, but one where the NFL has everybody, in my opinion. They're gonna get everybody on Mahomes by hook or by crook, and do what they can to. Again, they made Purdy look pretty good coming back, but the team still looked very vulnerable, and I feel like they did that on purpose because now you watch the first half, most of the game, to be honest, and people see how easily the Lions just ran down the field on the Niners, and you see what the Chiefs did to the Ravens. They didn't score a bunch of points, but when they needed to, they moved the ball pretty easy. I don't think anybody is going to, especially if the media sells it right, buy that the Niners, are going to be able to easily stop the Chiefs. They're going to look at it, oh man, the Chiefs are just getting rolling. Now they've beaten all these teams. They got one more to go. There's no way they lose now. And bam, Mr. Irrelevant comes through and finally becomes the first Mr. Irrelevant to ever win a Super Bowl. So many things there. And again, makes the fans happy. Right now, people are just actively rooting against Swift. You have your fans, you have your Swifties, of course. But for the most part, a lot of the talk since last year, when Pat McAfee, we talked about this when Pat McAfee brought it up, is, oh my gosh, if the Chiefs win again, I'm done. It's rigged for Mahomes. I'm tired of it. So the best way to swerve people, again, is have them lose. It's simple, but it's effective. So yeah, that's my initial gut. Like I said, I know I can't expound on too much because if you can watch my two playlists from Super Bowl 57 and last year. I go into a lot of it, but I wanted to repeat the very important aspects, of course. The ones that are obvious, but some people might be overlooking. I thought some commonalities were interesting that I wanted to go into. The wrestling booking, and there'll be some articles that come out. I'm not going to go crazy reading the articles. You know what that does to me. I do a lot better when I just kind of observe it and just ignore the talking heads and all these other pundits and stuff. So, yeah, you can let me know what you think. I'm sure a lot of people are going to like the Chiefs here. I'm sure most people are going to like the Chiefs here, thinking you can't let Mahomes go 2-4 in the Super Bowl. But I like the Niners. Now we got 2 weeks. Like I said, anything can happen. But this one's a little different, as you guys probably know with me. Again, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And it would take something absolutely astounding to get me off the Niners. I've said that so many times, and again, I don't think it's happening. I don't think there's anything they can do with the Chiefs here to make me believe that they're gonna win. I think they're trying their best to make people believe they're gonna win. But yeah, one of the biggest reasons I wanted to bring this up is because it might not seem like a lot, but you're looking at a pick'em right now, which is, in my opinion, great. Whereas in 2 days, you might be looking at minus 150 to take the Niners. I genuinely think that's going to be the case. They do it all the time, and I think they're going to do it again. I think they just opened it. They opened it at 2.5, they said, and it's at 1 now. And I think, again, the 1 is just so they can say, no matter what, they can't flip the Chiefs to being favorites. That goes against the whole story. But what they can do is move it a couple more points, make them look more like underdogs. Oh man, people are betting against Mahomes. Nobody believes in him. He's going to do it again. And it just seems like to me they're going to pull the 3 card Monty. So yeah, let me know what you think. I had done yesterday was more of a recap video. I went into obviously we did our live video, but I went into our NBA plays for today and stuff like that. So if you didn't see that, you can check it out. and I didn't really go too much into, obviously like the weeds of this matchup because there's so much to go into. That's why I made so many videos on them. But yeah, uh, we're going to be doing NBA probably for like the next week. There's not much to talk about as far as the Super Bowl. I got the Niners beating the Chiefs, so unless there's something crazy that comes up, that I can elaborate on, I think it'd be cool to make some money hitting the NBA. So I'll definitely be covering that. But yeah, definitely let me know what you think. I'm curious where people are. I know a lot of people were telling me Chiefs. They were saying that it's there's no way that they're not going to let Mahomes. The biggest reason I'm seeing is they don't think Mahomes is going to drop to 2-4, and I would agree if he'd be dropping to two out of five or 1 out of 4, but 2 out of 4 is nothing crazy. And again, you can't give everybody a Brady like winning percentage in the playoffs. Even LeBron James doesn't have a winning record in the finals, so I think Mahomes, again, if it's going to be the LeBron Michael type deal, to me it makes sense. Mahomes might get there, but he's not going to win as many as Brady. He's not going to win at the percentage Brady won at. And especially because this is a pretty fresh rematch. It's not like this happened 10 years ago. This happened a few years ago. I think you give it to Purdy. You have the battle of the Brady boys, and you finally have Mr. Irrelevant complete his story. Last year it was cut short with the fake injury. The Eagles got there, and of course, Mahomes knocked off the Eagles. And it's almost like this is what everybody was waiting for since last year. Everyone thought it'd be Niners Chiefs, but then they got swerved with the injury. Again, I think it was a fake injury. And this time around, it's going to be a healthy Purdy, I would imagine, versus Mahomes. Nobody believes in Purdy. You have people who believe in him, but they're really trying to push that he's just not that good, and he shouldn't even be in the same breath as Mahomes. All these different things. So yeah, I'm rolling with the Niners. The gold year, Mr. Irrelevant. The fact that I think everyone's going to be on the Chiefs after what they did to the Ravens. The Niners got decimated by the Ravens. You throw a lot of things in there, and I just don't see why people would be hot on the Niners, especially even though it was a comeback. The fact that because they sold the first half, Detroit looked so darn good against them, and the fact that the Packers look so good against them. Meanwhile, Kansas City's playing Buffalo and Baltimore. Like, that's going to sit with the public. So I wanted to make this one a little longer because, again, instead of making 10 different videos going into each reason, I there's not a lot of different like things that we haven't covered already. It's just basically the story, the WWE comparisons that I've noticed, the weird fishy line here where I feel like it's just a weird line. That's the best way I can put it. This 1 point, just to make the Chiefs underdogs again, and the fact that they have to push somebody, in my opinion, besides Brady or Mahomes. Like they've buried Lamar, they've buried Josh Allen, they've buried Tua, all for Mahomes. Like I feel like you just can't do that. Like you have to convince people that a well-rounded team is going to beat a superstar. And again, I think people are underestimating the Taylor Swift distraction possibility. Where whether not saying it'll be on purpose, but there's going to be some type of deal where they say the Niners came here to play football, the Chiefs are here to entertain. Essentially, they're here to have a concert, and they kind of gave us a little bit of a preview of that when they beat the Bills. When you had Kelsey doing keggers in the stands, and you had Brittany and Taylor acting like they were at a wedding together, just everybody having fun, and football's about winning. It's not about having fun. I think that's the narrative that they're going to try and push. That this team was ready. This team was not there to have fun. This team was there to get their redemption. If you watch Debo a couple years ago, you know it's been his redemption story for quite a while now. And in my opinion, there's no way they pull the rug on the Niners in the NFC champion or in the Super Bowl a second time. And again, to the same team nonetheless, which would be just insane. So I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, but yeah, my as they say, too early. Although in our case, it's quite late.
we've been on the pulse all year. Uh, I got the Niners winning this game. I think they beat the Chiefs outright, and I'll lay the 1 point because sure it could be a 1 point game, but I'm just greedy. I don't like putting out any odds where you're not getting basically now from minus 110 to minus 115, not much of a difference, but even still, I like laying the 1 point. I always do spreads if I'm picking a favorite because it's very easy to pick a favorite and not pick a spread, right? I like this team at minus 300. All right, well, how are you guys going to make money? Now, in this case, it doesn't make that much of a difference, honestly, but you'd be surprised how the juice adds up. So, yeah, I lay the point. Minus one here, no problem. And yeah, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think no, the story is too strong for Mahomes. They're going to give him a second in a row. It's already there. You got Taylor Swift, or if you think nope, the whole thing's been a trap. Now everyone's going to be on the Chiefs, and Purdy's going to get his revenge that he couldn't get last year, and Debo's going to get his revenge, and the NFL fans are going to rejoice at the fact that the Chiefs did not get another Super Bowl. So they've done a good job, but I think this is again the story that makes the most sense, and the Niners winning makes the most sense in my opinion. So I'm sure there's a lot of other reasons, but like I said, I really want to just simplify it and cover the four major commonalities of these this game coming up. So it'll be fun. I'm curious where the spread's going to be in a week. I'm sure it's going to move where it's going to be in 2 weeks. But I really wanted to do this now, mostly because while you can get minus one, you're not going to get any better than that. I promise you that. It's not going to flip the other way. So if you're going to be on the Niners, you take it now. If you disagree and you're going to be on the Chiefs, the best I can tell you to do is wait. Wait till they get back up to 2.5, 3 points. They will not be favorites. I will guarantee you that. They're obviously pushing the story of again the underdog Mahomes versus the world, and I wouldn't be surprised if they started using that as a title because we called that 3 4 months ago. I wouldn't be surprised if it was Mahomes versus the world, all over ESPN because that's what they're trying to push. So I know kind of a longer video, but as I said, not sure, especially because we're going to be doing NBA and such. I figured the next week or so I'll be hitting the NBA videos. If I see something crazy damning, then of course I'll go into the Niners and Chiefs and such. But for now, I don't see much more happening. Like it's not like these are two brand new teams that we never expected. We've had such a good pulse this year that I've already looked into so much of both of these teams, and yeah, I like the Niners. There's not much more to say there. So I'm curious if you agree with me. If you don't, I am curious where the public is. I haven't been able to look into it yet, but I do find it funny the analysts went from up Mahomes. He needs help. He can't do it all by himself. They don't have receivers, and now they're playing the Niners. In my opinion, a much better team than even though the Ravens mauled them. The Niners are still a better team. I don't care what people say. If you're gonna pretend it's real, and now people are saying, "Oh, you could see it was a consensus. Every analyst picking the Chiefs, nobody giving the Niners any chance." And I think they're trying to plant those seeds. They barely got past these teams in the playoffs. The Chiefs rolled by their teams. Mahomes in the playoffs is a different animal. Purdy really never played much in the playoffs. So you could really see how, in my opinion, they're going to sneakily get people on Kansas City, only for Brock Purdy to complete his Cody Rhodes story. So let me know what you think. Again, thank you everybody who's always attends the lives. They're always fun. Everyone just who provides their insight, I always appreciate it. Whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, again, as a think tank, it's trying to use all the insight we can to come to the best conclusion. And I think we got this one already. I think again, for once, I think my preseason future is going to pay. I think the Niners are going to get it done. 2 years in a row now, I've chased this team. I took them last year. I didn't have them in the preseason last year, but I had them like halfway through the year, and they didn't come through. This year, I think it's happening. I think the Niners get it done. And again, the gold. I would not ignore the gold. They're talking a lot about gold, especially when you throw in the Swift currency. It's pretty interesting. So there's a lot to consider, but for me, the Niners just make so much sense. And that's what I wanted to say. And I brought this up where something has to give. I said there's no way the Chiefs are going to win a Super Bowl again. I said that at the beginning of the year. I said there's no way the Chiefs are not. Again, I didn't even have them making the playoffs. I thought they were going to have a rough year. It wasn't until like I said, week 4, week 5, when I'm like, okay, now we're getting it. We're getting Mahomes versus the world. But beginning of the year is pretty funny because I had that, but then on the other end, I had the Niners as a lock to win the Super Bowl. So again, I'm either like dead over the target or laughably wrong. So there's no in between, and it's going to be the same in 2 weeks. It's going to be either, the Niners get completely mauled and I've been wrong for 2 years, or the Chiefs get beat. Mahomes has a crazy game, but it's just not enough to beat this ridiculous Niners team. So that's just what I think. Most of you guys know my opinion, but I wanted to elaborate on the best I could and just go into the different aspects that I thought were interesting, whether it be wrestling, whether it be the rematch, whether it be the coaching, whether it be Purdy versus Mahomes, the gold. There's a lot to go into, but I tried to cover it all. And I can't see much really knocking me off this. I can't see much changing here. So that's the reason I thought I'd put this out while the line was such a free line, in my opinion. So take care. Happy earnings.